America is a great country full of rich history. Our history spans from the 1600s to present day. Instead of boring you with a history lecture for 30 minutes, we decided to just make it into a game show because, you know, everybody loves games and everybody loves shows. We even threw some interesting facts that not a lot of people know. So, please and applause for our Jeopardy host, Alex.
Hello, my fellow Americans, and welcome to a special American History edition of Jeopardy. I would like to introduce my guests. We have from New Mexico, Crystal Curtis, from Florida, Cameron Carew, from New Jersey, Mohammed Ahmed, and from Colorado, last but not least, Skylar Bauman. Okay, so let's get started. Crystal Curtis.
Alrighty, let's do 18th century 100.
This document halted westward expansion of the colonists after the French and Indian War.
What would be the Proclamation of 1763? Basically what happened is King George III issued this proclamation in order to prevent colonists from settling past the Appalachian Mountains. He did this because after the 7 Years' War, he had bad relations with the Native Americans, so he wanted to try and fix the relations. Unfortunately, it also oppressed the colonists.
That is correct. What is the Proclamation of 1763? Up next, Cameron.
I think what I'll take is the 18th century for 400 points.
This country aided the United States the most during the Revolutionary War.
Well, what I do know is that America and France had common enemies. The common enemy being the English crown, the Queen of England, or the King of England, should I say. We both, the Americans wanted to be free from colonial rule, and the French didn't want the English having any more colonial influence in North America. So we fought together, we won the war together. My final answer is, what is France?
And that is correct. France. Mohammed Ahmed.
I will choose the 17th century for 100.
The name of the boat that brought the settlers to Jamestown.
Well, in 1608, separatists, later known as Pilgrims, were disgruntled from the church in England, so they moved to Holland. But there they found a secular life, and the Dutch guilds excluded them. Their new generation began to move away from the religion, so William Bradford said that this is evil, and that they should move across the Atlantic to search for a new life. They went back to England to reorganize, and found a merchant ship known as the Mayflower, which they used to get to America. So my final answer is, what is the Mayflower?
Correct. And Skylar Bowman.
I will take 17th century for 200.
This colony was known as the Lost Colony.
I believe that colony was known as Roanoke. Roanoke was an attempted colony that was established in the Virginia colonies. It failed later on, but what happened before was Captain John White led this expedition. They sailed across and they set up in the Virginia colony. They tried to establish a permanent settlement there, but what happened was they were running low on supplies, food was dwindling, other good resources were scarce, so Captain John White had to make a return trip to get supplies. What happened was England was in a war at the moment, and that war actually prevented him to go back for a couple years. But when he finally returned with the supplies, he found that all of the colonists had vanished and that there was no one there. So my final answer was Roanoke.
What is Roanoke? Crystal, back to you.
All right, I'll take the 18th century 500.
This war had the American colonists in Great Britain fighting against the Native Americans and the French.
What is the French and Indian War? A really cool thing about the French and Indian War is that in 1754, George Washington went to the Ohio River Valley. Unfortunately, the French had already established outposts and forts there to trade with the Indians, while George Washington and his army wanted to trade with the Indians. The Indians and the French then ganged up against George Washington and defeated him. Well, Britain was not too happy about that and declared war on France. And in 1763, after Britain defeated France and the Native Americans, they signed the Treaty of Paris. And also the Proclamation of 1763 was issued to try and help with Native American relations. That is the French and Indian War.
What is the French and Indian War? And Cameron.
I think what I'll take is the 20th century for 500 points.
The scientists have theorized the way in which we can make an atomic bomb.
Well, that one's easy. Everybody knows that, or not everybody, but a lot of people know that Albert Einstein was the man who created the famous equation E equals mc squared. E equaling mc squared, of course, but you know what I mean. Meaning energy, and mass meaning, or m equaling meaning mass. This set the precedence for nuclear physics as we know today, and all that kind of stuff. So what Albert Einstein did was sent a letter to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, basically explaining how we could make an atomic bomb. The atomic bomb eventually led to the Cold War and the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, effectively ending World War II. So my final answer is, who is Albert Einstein?
That is correct. Mohammed?
I will take the 18th century for 300.
What meeting led to the Declaration of Independence in the Marine Corps?
There were delegates from 12 colonies that met at Carpenter's Hall, but each one of them had different aims. They were used to working individually, and so to unionize, they created the Grand Council. Together, they came up with the Intolerable Acts following the Boston Tea Party. Once Americans rebelled against England, Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence. I believe that this meeting was known as the First Continental Congress. What is the Continental Congress?
The First Continental Congress, correct. Skylar?
I will take 17th century for 500.
This was the first legislative body in all of North America.
That must be the House of Burgesses. It was founded in Virginia, and it was the first popularly representative legislative body in the New World. It was founded because the colonists were upset that England had a parliament and they didn't have anybody to represent them. So they said, hey, we'd like someone to represent us as well. We don't just want everything to happen in England. So what happened is, every year or so, the royal governor would meet with the members of the House of Burgesses, and they would actually discuss taxes, politics, and other things that were happening in the colonies together. So I believe the answer is, what is the House of Burgesses?
That is correct. Crystal?
All right, let's do 20th century for 300, please.
These were the 47th and 40th states to become part of the United States. What and what?
Oh, I know this one. I was actually born in one of them. It's New Mexico and Arizona. What's really cool about New Mexico and Arizona is they used to be a part of the Mexican state Sonora. And during the Mexican-American Wars, they were seized. But what's really cool, in 2012, New Mexico and Arizona celebrated their 100th year anniversary. They both got statehood less than a month apart from each other. New Mexico got its statehood in January 6th of 1912, and Arizona was February 14th of 1912. What is New Mexico and Arizona?
Yes, what is New Mexico and Arizona? And then 47 years later, the last two states, Alaska and Hawaii, became part of the United States. Cameron.
I will take the 20th and 21st century for 200 points.
The biggest musical festival ever held in American history.
That's an easy one. Woodstock, 1969. And the thing about this is the people who planned Woodstock did not expect so many people to come. So they had massive shortages of food, water, basic necessities. But there wasn't a shortage of drugs, LSD, marijuana. There were a lot of babies being made, and they were expected a lot of people to die from either disease or, accidents, but only 2 people died. They were, I believe they were college students, and they were run over by a tractor while sunbathing. So my final answer is, what is Woodstock 1969?
Yes. What is Woodstock 1969? And Mohammed.
I will take the 19th century for 200.
This president appears on the coin, but faces right instead of left.
Well, Victor David Brenner created this plaque of Abraham Lincoln facing right. President Theodore Roosevelt was so impressed by this, he suggested to the Secretary of the Treasury to use this on the penny. What is President Abraham Lincoln?
Who is President Abraham Lincoln? Good. Skylar?
I will take 18th century for 200.
This happened when the colonists got fed up with unfair British rule.
Oh, that's an easy one. It was the Revolutionary War. The Revolutionary War was brought on by many unfair taxes and imposed things on the colonists, such as the Proclamation of 1763. That really angered the colonists. There were acts such as the Stamp Act and Tea Act, which also helped lead to this occurring. So finally what happened was the Americans got so fed up, they're like, hey, we don't want to be governed by you anymore. We are declaring ourselves free of you. And England said, no, you're not. We're going to war over this. So what is the Revolutionary War?
Yes, what is Revolutionary War? Crystal.
I will do 19th century 400, please.
This painkiller in the 1800s caused soldier's disease.
Well, I know that Friedrich Wilhelm Turner discovered a very strong painkiller between the years 1805 and 1816, and he named it after the Greek god Morpheus. What is morphine? It actually was used during the Civil War to treat pain, and it ended up being the cause of addiction for over 400,000 soldiers. But it was not later termed soldier's disease until 1915, but it was widely known.
Answer?
Yep, what is morphine?
What is morphine? Cameron?
I think what I'll take is 19th century for 100.
This This great expedition of the newly bought land of the Louisiana Purchase started on May 21st, 1804.
I don't know. I knew that we bought a lot of land from France, and the purchase was called the Louisiana Purchase. And there were two guys that were sent out to map the land that they just bought. They traveled on boats down the rivers, and they ended up killing their horses so they could eat. And they got trapped in the mountains in the winter. But I just can't remember the name of the expedition. The final answer is that I don't know.
Your time is up. And it is the Lewis and Clark expedition. Okay, so in 1804, President Thomas Jefferson wanted to map and include the western part of the United States into America. So what he did was send two captains, Meriwether Lewis and his friend William Clark, and a group of troops to explore. So they got on boats and then they traveled up the Missouri River up to the northwest and back. The purpose was to, make the western part of America American. And that's the Lewis and Clark expedition. Fine.
Let's go with 19th century for 500.
This dispute caused violence and civil disturbances over whether or not Kansas should be a free or slave territory.
Settlers in Kansas were neutral. So they had people from the north coming in to sway them towards anti-slavery, and people from the south coming for pro-slavery. People from the south were known as border ruffians, and few of them actually had slaves, but they were driven by their hatred for abolitionists and blacks. So Senator David Atkinson of Missouri even said that to defend their institution, if necessary, they can kill everyone. People coming in from the north were known as carpetbaggers because of their suitcases. There was a lot of bloodshed, and this event soon led to the Civil War. What is bleeding Kansas?
And that's correct. Skylar.
20th to 21st century for 100.
What states did the Dust Bowl in the 1930s affect?
Those states are southeastern Colorado, southwestern Kansas, the panhandles of Texas and Oklahoma, and northeastern New Mexico. The Dust Bowl had many devastating effects in these areas. The Dust Bowl caused crops to die. It would also, if you got caught out in the dust, one of the dust storms, it could actually kill you because you'd inhale all the dust that was flowing around, and it would cause your lungs to stop working. So that's my final answer.
And that's correct. And here's a little video.
In one black blizzard, 5 million tons of soil took to the air over Wichita, Kansas. Another swept from Montana to the Mississippi. The stories have grown into the Dust Bowl legends of the death of livestock by the thousands, the closing of railroads and schools, the use of snowplows to clear the dust, of cars sandblasted free of paint, and the exodus of 3 million people in defeat. It's not...
Moving on. Crystal.
I will take 17th century 300.
17th century. These types of colonies were the most self-governing of British colonies.
Well, I know that there were 13 original colonies. But I don't know what they were called. I mean, I know Virginia was in them, and several North Carolina, South Carolina, and stuff like that. But I don't know what they were called. I can't remember.
Okay, and your time is up. They are the proprietary colonies. Okay, a proprietary colony would consist of one or two individuals who would retain the rights, which would now be known as the privilege of state. And these were the 13 colonies. We have the Virginia colony, the province of Georgia, the province of the Carolinas. In 1712, they were split into two, North and South. The province of Pennsylvania, and then there's Maine, the province of Maryland, the province of New York, the province of New Jersey, and the Delaware colony. And Delaware became the first ever to be a United States state. Cam.
I think what I'll take is the 20th and 21st century for 300 points.
This invention, made in 1901, revolutionized intercontinental travel.
Yeah, we all know that, or you may not know this, but it's pretty common knowledge, that you can get on a plane and travel to Asia, Africa, Europe, Russia, wherever you want in the world. You just gotta pay a lot of money. And that is intercontinental travel. The airplane was invented by the Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur, in 1901, as you can see. And the thinking behind this was the popular theory in science back then on flight was that your craft had to be lighter than air. Well, birds aren't lighter than air, so what they did was they created something that was heavier than air that could soar through the sky at high speeds. So my final answer is, what is the airplane?
And that is correct. And isn't it great how the airplanes went from that to this? Mohammed.
I will take the 20th and 21st century for 400.
This war was fought in retaliation against Al-Qaeda for September 11th.
Well, there was a civil war going on in Afghanistan, and NATO and the Allied forces decided to intervene. They launched Operation Enduring Freedom to drive the Taliban out of power. Most of them escaped, but the United States established the ISAF, the International Security Assistance Force, to oversee military operations in Afghanistan and train Afghanistan National Security Forces. My final answer is, what is the war in Afghanistan?
What is the war in Afghanistan? Skylar.
I will take the 19th century for 300.
Napoleon sold this territory to the United States for $15 million.
It has to be the Louisiana Territory. France was in debt at the time that this purchase was made. France had been fighting many wars, and it had lost a lot of troops, and war was still raging in Europe. So they had to get some money. So what happened was, America wanted to expand westward because it was stuck just along the coastline. So an American envoy was sent to France, and they asked, hey, can we buy the Louisiana Territory for you? France really wanted to do that because it had like no money left, so France sold us the Louisiana Territory for $15 million. So my final answer is, what's the Louisiana Territory?
What is the Louisiana Territory? And that is correct. Crystal?
I think we gotta go to the final Jeopardy, don't we? Yeah, I think we have to go to the final Jeopardy. I think it's about time.
Okay. Final Jeopardy, who wrote the American National Anthem?
That person would be Francis Scott Key. So my final answer is, who is Francis Scott Key?
Correct. Alrighty,
Now technically your device is on. Can you tell?
I have rise up, live out the true meaning of its creeds. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream. That one day
Alrighty,
That
and that concludes Jeopardy. And thank you for joining us for this week's special of North American Jeopardy. We have special thanks to our contestants over here. We look forward to you tuning in to see who makes it to finals. God bless you.
Alright, now mind you, America has an extremely long history. We've been a nation for over 200 years. And for us to actually cover all the important facts that have actually happened to America in this time, we would have been up here a lot longer. So please keep that in mind. But these topics that we did cover should not only be basic knowledge that all of us have learned, but it should be ingrained into our spirits as Americans. Because we are American and we're proud of who